Hey, welcome to Real Talk Season 2, Episode 98. I'm Todd, this is AJ, and we're back.
Hey, y'all. Y'all is in you. How you doing?
Yeah, y'all is you all, so.
That's right.
You said you. Anyway, welcome to the episode 98. As I've already mentioned, we're 2 episodes away from episode 100. We're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, man.
As you mentioned last week, we're going to do something mediocre. I can't talk. So we look forward to seeing you guys. Stick around. Let's build it up. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot of questions we didn't get to because of live. I want to talk a little bit about live because it was an interesting live.
A little bit of reflection.
Yep. And it was a little odd. We'll get to that. But in the meantime, real quick, you guys know the deal. I got to tell you the business and what this is all about. What's Real Talk? This is an opportunity to talk about life, God, the Bible, and everything in between, and hopefully inspire you to think about the real things of life while seeking the truth out in the Word of God.
Boom.
Up above, below, somewhere in the vicinity of where you're watching this, whether it's Rumble, YouTube, what's the other one?
Facebook,
podcast. Yeah. You will see a link, www.theremnant.live/real-talk. If you click that link, it'll go down to the bottom of the page. It'll say submit a question. Hit submit. Tippity-tap your question or topic into the box. Hit submit, and it will go into our database live in the moment, completely anonymously. Couldn't find you if we tried.
And we have.
Right? Absolutely we have.
Boom.
So if you don't think that we aren't willing to wrestle with some tough questions, well, I encourage you to go back and watch our Real Talk Live, which we do weekly on Facebook. Is that one on YouTube? Mm-hmm. Okay, on YouTube. We got so that I was going to say we should put it on Rumble, but it's not possible yet.
Rumble, I don't think Rumble's live yet.
So regardless, we are willing to talk about the tough things, even though at times it's hurtful. So that's the gist of it. AJ?
Yeah.
Any thoughts you have before we get diving in?
Let's see. Well, I'm excited for this episode, man. I think it's going to be a good one. A lot going on. So
we are in legitimately a strange time.
Oh yeah.
This is a good segue.
It's gotten stranger and stranger.
Man, for the last year, we're heading up to a year since quarantine hit and really the world kind of went haywire for a bit, right? Mm-hmm. At least it feels that way. As Christians, we have a viewpoint. You know, certainly God is still God and He's still King, so that's great. And by the way, not just as Christians. As Christians, we believe that, but I believe that's reality, regardless of whether you believe it. However, I think it's a good segue. What are your thoughts? We haven't really broken this down. This will sort of be the first time we do this.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on our recent live last week? I think it's safe to say people came at us.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, I think people kind of came in a little hot. I think they. I don't know, man. It's interesting. When you set the tone for for something, people tend to either back up or they just come in even hotter, or they come in, fist flying. So this last live was interesting because I think we opened up a door that honestly, like you said, it can be hurtful sometimes, but we also opened up a door for what real talk is.
That's really good.
We opened up a door for people to really ask what's really on their mind, I guess. Mm-hmm. Whether that was, are we a cult? Are we?
Yeah,
or
are we? Yeah.
What was some of the other ones?
We had a lot of political questions.
Yeah, we had a lot of political questions this last Thursday.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I think that I don't know, man. I think we gave people an opportunity to I guess for them to ask us what they really wanted to ask. And for me, even though it was hard at times, and there was times where it was like, man, what do I say here? And it was a challenge for me personally, I think it was a success.
Yeah, so I would agree in that sense, okay? So let everyone know that didn't possibly, because I know we get people listening on the podcast. Yeah. We don't podcast that. We don't do live is meant to be interactive, so it's primarily on Facebook and YouTube.
Yep.
You can go to our channel through our Facebook page, and we have a YouTube channel as well as the Remnant Church, right? Or is it just the Remnant Church?
I think it's Remnant Church.
Yeah. Go to our website at www.theremnant.life. I can kind of lead you there. Anyway, regardless. So the idea is to have the same kind of vibe as far as interacting with topics and questions, but live. Mm-hmm. Well, we had 3 primary areas that we sort of, I wouldn't say got attacked, but certainly were a little more, maybe aggressive is the right word. Yeah. 1 was political. Mm-hmm. 2 was our church. Real Talk is sponsored by a ministry of the Remnant Church here in Whitley County, Indiana.
Yep.
So that being said, the church's response to COVID, and then, of course, we got one cult question.
That's right.
The only thing I was looking back and it said many people, and that's not true. Many people don't think that. It's one family. right, that has thought that. And who, by the way, that family still likes and shares all of our stuff, which we'll get to that. So they do. That's a fact.
It's weird.
So I would say this. I think what's tough is we did come in. I went back and watched the beginning, and we made some references to some stuff. And our primary, listen. First of all, we're humans. We have our own viewpoints on things, and part of Real Talk is making it safe to talk about those things.
Absolutely.
And you know, when people, I think my biggest problem with it was this idea that because we have differing viewpoints, at least the person assumed we did. You know, why do you think this about Trump? And, you know, clearly you make it uncomfortable for people based on your viewpoints. And it's like, that's the problem with the world is if something's uncomfortable, well, first of all, that it's uncomfortable. Let's say that you and I have different viewpoints, even politically. That somehow that means we can't be friends or we can't have discussion.
If it's uncomfortable, it's wrong. That's how they feel.
Yeah, and that disappointed me. And or it was discouraging a little bit. But I'm glad we got to talk about it. And I'm not sure if that person, because again, it's anonymous, will ever come back. But we answered the best we could.
Yeah.
And then, of course, where my stance was with this, and we touched on this, but I think it's important for people, is our biggest talk – or our point of all that was the idea of censoring free speech. You know, and Funter and Clint might give me the glare here soon to not talk about this, but I think this is important, right? We're on social media. We're on, even now, our podcasts, and we're living in a world where we say we want information to be spread freely and people to have viewpoints. It doesn't mean we have to agree with everything. And I put this out there. Listen, and I'm not the one that's coined this, but I really believe this. There are tons of people in this world whom I do not agree with their viewpoint, their words, or even their worldview.
Yeah.
In fact, it's antithesis to everything I stand for. However, I would fight for their right to say it.
Yeah.
And to have it, because
that's America.
Exactly. And it's a slippery slope, because who determines what is worthy of being allowed to be put out there? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well,
that's been my concern. And they tried to corner us and say, if we believe that, I feel like it. Maybe their heart wasn't there, but the idea, I felt like we were being pressed into a corner to say, if you believe in this, if you're against censorship, then you stand for hate and all these things. And I think that's such dangerous thinking.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought this up, because I saw something along the lines of people talking about, you know, people who are on the other side saying that, like, you know, we deserved, well, not we, but, you know, people who have been outspoken about the election on social media, they were for people getting blocked and stuff. And they said that, you know, and I guess I see where they're coming from, but I think there's something bigger to look past, which is they said, you know, Twitter, for example, they said, hey, you know, well, Twitter's it's a private company, so they should be able to remove whoever they want. Okay. I'm like, okay, sure, like that makes sense. But look at the other side. Clearly, it's bias. That's the big part. People don't want to point out the fact that people are saying Trump should die on Twitter.
But that's allowed to say.
And it wasn't getting blocked.
And dude, that's a great point. And this is factual. You guys can look this up yourself. So let's take Twitter as a great example. So the problem for me, and I think for you, and this idea of censorship, is exactly what you said. So fine, you want to say you stand against whatever, even if we disagree that what you're labeling as hate and all that is wrong. But you're letting the leaders of other countries literally call for the death of Christians, the death of Americans, and you allow those Twitters to stay active. Yep. And so to me, it's also, I mean, it's hard not to believe that there is a bias against a certain individual.
Absolutely.
And you're just using the idea of, quote, hate speech, which you've defined, by the way, as the excuse to censor what you don't believe in. Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Look at the difference. Oh, I believe there's a rigged election. Blocked. I think Trump should die. I can stay on.
Yeah.
It's such a big difference. Like, it's crazy to me.
And people, for some reason, don't want to believe that. Let's say you and I right now, we're not even giving a political viewpoint on whether that. What we're literally, and if you're choosing to believe that, despite what we're saying, then you're being kind of arrogant, because you're telling us what we mean when we're telling you what we mean by what we say. So certainly, I'm not going to sit here and lie that I don't have my own political leanings or viewpoints. And it's pretty obvious if you listen. You know, I would be considered conservative probably based on the popular views of that, of political or, of quote, progressive or conservative, et cetera. Yeah. Liberal, whatever. But I'm telling you right now, my biggest thing is, and I've said this from the beginning, a lot of the things that I personally find concerning, I would be saying the same thing if it were the other way around.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, America does not stand for what it says it stands for.
We've said this for a long time. This whole issue is not. It
should not be partisan. Yeah,
It's not.
exactly.
And I think looking, it's just frustrating.
Well, and we were told too, right? You need to separate. One of the questions was you need to separate church and state. And it's like, listen, this is real talk. Absolutely. God, I said this on live. God doesn't look down and see us as Republicans or Democrats or independents or moderates. He sees us as his children.
Absolutely.
And that is the message. And you can't tell me that I don't believe or love people that view differently than me just because you don't like what I believe. What you think I believe, by the way, I've never come out and flat out said.
Yep.
But bottom line is, I certainly believe that. God doesn't view us that way. We separate ourselves. But also we believe that if you really think about it, and we've never said this, but the idea of real talk is in a weird way against censorship in general. It's the idea that we should be free to discuss the real things of life to figure out the truth, right? And clearly our aim is to get people talking about more than politics and more than that stuff, which is God and life and what does all this mean? But part of that, we live in the world, and part of that is for us to stay silent and during the midst of that isn't real talk, I guess. Does that make sense?
I don't think so. I'm with you 100%. And honestly, when it comes to these big companies that these social media platforms,
sure.
I think that honestly, I would be okay if they were just come out and say, yes, we are biased towards that side.
Yeah,
I would be okay
because
with that
you are
then.
a private company.
Yeah,
yeah, I agree with that.
So why don't you just say it? But instead, you try to put out this stance of like, no, man, we're in the middle, and we are a platform that doesn't. You can say whatever you want, and it's like, it's not true, man. It's not true.
Yeah. So I think I'm with you 100%. So I guess if you guys are listening and watching, we're not going to shy away from talking about the topics of the day. We've done this since quarantine came. And it doesn't matter what you think. If you're a person who's saying we are being hateful when I'm telling you we're not, who's really being hateful and divisive? It's not us. I can tell you right now, if you're watching this and, maybe you are on the other side of the political spectrum than what you think we are. And maybe you're right. We still love you. And God still loves you. And the bottom line is we can still be friends and we can still learn from each other and we can still have conversations. And that's what we're trying to say. And that's what I was fired up about last week, was the idea that someone gets to determine what's a valuable thought to share. And the danger in that is who determines that? Who determines what is okay to discuss? And when you start allowing, whether it's big tech, government, whatever, to determine what you're allowed to talk about or dictate, that's a very slippery slope. And as I said before, just because the side you don't like is now the one being told they can't talk, it doesn't mean that that's not going to come back towards you a different time. We should all be concerned about that, right? I want to learn. And I've said this before. I will have discussions with people of different, even religions and belief systems, as long as they're truly open to learning and open to having that dialogue. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's my thoughts on it.
I'm with you, man. I think there's like you said, there's a difference. I think people, for some reason, coming from our, like you said, to go back to our side of the spectrum, like you said, leaning more towards conservative, and us wanting to protect our freedom of speech in America. When people were initially going crazy on all these social media platforms about Trump being the worst president ever and saying, oh, hey, impeach. You know what? Like, and I'm sure you can agree with this. I was never upset with the fact they said it because that's the right as an American. That is their opinion.
Sure.
It's more of why? Do you have a why? Do you have a reason? And that's where we would get frustrated because people never would. But there's a difference there. We're not saying block.
No, of course not.
We're saying give us a reason.
Yeah, and if you're watching, you're one of the people asking these questions, it gives us a chance to go a little deeper too. Yeah. So let's jump to the COVID question. So we were kind of questioning. We had someone that said, and this is paraphrasing. We came to your church. Again, Real Talk's sponsored by our church.
Yep.
We came to your church, really enjoyed it, but have been very disappointed in your response to COVID epidemic. Again, at this point, still don't really have an issue. That's an opinion and that's a viewpoint. But then they made this claim at the end that says, it really just saddens me that you don't care about people, that you don't love people. What a huge jump
Yep.
You know, so first of all, I'm not going to relate again what we have and do not do as far as the COVID response. We certainly have. We have changed the way we do things.
Absolutely.
Here. Yes or no?
Yes, we have.
We clean differently. We disinfect more often differently. I mean, we can go on and on. There's masks provided. There's space for people to socially distance if they choose to do so. All these other things. It doesn't really matter. The point is, I didn't have a problem with the idea that, you know, that's the real talk. You should do more. You shouldn't. But when it that's the problem with the world. They want to tell us there's a huge jump. Sorry if I'm all over the place. I'm trying to put this into words. Mm-hmm. There's a huge jump from here's what's happening to here's what you think and your motives. And that's what's scary is for all of us is you've got to be careful not to put motives on people. So it's okay to question you, but true open-mindedness and true love and real talk is bring up the question, the concern, and allow you to respond without putting on you the motive.
Right.
Because then I make you defensive, right? So it's like saying, hey, AJ, let's say you offended me.
Yeah.
Or you hurt my feelings. Hey, AJ, it bothered me when you didn't call me back. Why do you hate people? Or why do you hate me?
Yeah,
do you see what I'm saying? I immediately make you go, what?
Yep.
As opposed to the real issue is you didn't like that I didn't call, but now you've muddied the waters. Mm-hmm. Or I didn't like that you didn't call, but now I've muddied the waters because I've made on top of that told you what you're doing, which is you hate me. Mm-hmm. That's it. I don't know, man. It's that my concern is how we are being divided, and even take out politics. I think culture is doing that. Mm-hmm. Culture is telling us to be God and to determine what people's motives are. I don't know if that makes sense. Fun term. Does that make any sense? Yeah, he kind of helps us know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we go on our tangents.
I didn't mean to ramble on that, but does that make sense? It's kind of a deep thought, but my big thing is you can't. It's so foolish to tell people why they're doing something. Ask questions. Yeah, and then be willing to hear the answers.
It's loaded at that point.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's loaded. Like you've already made the decision. You're just getting the talking part out of the way. Like, you know, for example, like you said, you can relate this even back to just Christians if you want. Like, you know, when it says to go to your brother when you've been wronged. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're going at it with that mentality, you've already loaded. You're going into it loaded. You've already made your decision on where you stand with it. You're taking
away opportunity for them to explain. You have. Yeah. So I guess, guys, what we're saying is when you talk to people and have issues, you know, ask questions and be willing to hear the answer. Be willing to hear that there was a misunderstanding. Be willing to hear that the motive wasn't what you thought. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes people can do things and hurt you without their motive being wrong. Mm-hmm. Right? And sometimes we want to demonize people and make people the villain in our story. Yep. Right? We can't just make it, hey, you didn't call me. Let you respond, and maybe you will apologize. Like, you know what, man, I should have. No, I got to make you a villain. Yep. You did it intentionally. And you wanted to hurt me. Culture has shaped that so well because that's what we expect now from people, to the point where if people do it a different way, we almost feel even more suspicious of their motives. That's so good, man. It's so true. So that's kind of where we were at, I think. I don't know what your other thoughts are. And then, you know, again, we've talked about this so many times about cult. Mm-hmm. You know, we have one family here, 2 people. Literally, I've heard from 2 people. One is from one family who, by the way, if I really boil it down to, is a supporter of us, got hurt by their own kid who goes here. By the way, the kid's an adult, and just kind of jumped and tried to hurt them, which we've all done, right? You try to hurt them where it hurts. Sure. If I want to hurt you, I'm going to question what you're. And then that same person now shares their stuff, says thank you so much, you know, all this stuff. So I forgive that because I know it's human. One lesson to take from it is you got to be careful what you say because it can get taken and ran. It's that whole idea of like if I tear a feather pillow up on a rooftop, I can't ever put all those feathers back in because they're flying all over. And then the other was a guy, I don't like the guy, I'll just be completely real with you, who just made up a story about our men's group and claimed that we have levels and just weird stuff. So yeah, really weird. I don't know why we get that question all the time, and it's so dangerous because real cults out there, they become normalized. Yep. Because we say we call any church that we don't like, and we say it's cultish. Yep. When I moved to this city, I worked for a nonprofit that worked with a lot of different churches. Yep. I cannot tell how many times I heard from someone that this church is a cult and that church is, and it's like, man, it's just I'm being serious about that, and it's funny because that's just so silly and foolish. Yeah, man, that's something you shouldn't throw around. Yeah, you really shouldn't.
No, you shouldn't. You know,
You dilute the word.
Yeah, exactly. You dilute it, and then it makes, like you said, it makes it more normalized for real cults out there to just exist and just prosper, honestly.
Yeah, because they're going to go, well, everybody says that.
Yeah, we're all a cult.
And like I've said, and I've challenged people, I've done this. Go type in whatever pastor, maybe famous church you like, and type the word cult and watch and see that somebody's calling them. Right? I always point this out. You know, John MacArthur is considered one of the most conservative, solid biblical, whether you agree with everything he says or not, solid biblical teacher. John Piper, and somebody out there's called them a cult, like cult leader or whatever, cult tendencies. You know, it's a weapon that's used in Christianity and by the world because they know that true believers don't want to ever come across that way.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I hate to bring this up again. If you're on live, you're probably like, why are you guys beating a dead horse? I think it was important to, in case someone goes back and listens, you know, I don't know. We've had time to think about it, and I guess we just want to address it and let people know, because I had a lot of people reach out to me after that and be like, man, it felt like it went, that was really it was aggressive and people came at you guys and it was tough to watch. And, you know, sometimes that happens and it's true, but bottom line is we did say this is real talk.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's right or wrong, but you know this. Once we started getting those tough ones, I was like, fine, we're in.
Yep.
Let's, you know, we want
exactly. And I'm okay with that. And that's why, honestly, I deemed it a success, because we have made a show. We've made a place where people can come and ask those real questions.
Exactly, dude. That's a great point. So,
because
we start to filter,
Joe Schmo's going to go to big old church of whatever and say and ask, well, or tell them, hey, I think you've handled COVID wrong.
No, usually not. And by the way, every church handles it wrong, right? The ones that are really, according to someone, the ones that are really strict as far as they're still closed down, people are judging them.
Yep.
People are judging the people that are open. It's just, I don't know. You have to trust. You got to be prayerful in your decisions. And as church leaders and pastors, and I feel so much being in it, I feel so much sympathy and empathy for pastors out there, because what a tough time to try to lead spiritually when you're being told either way that you're not either loving God or you're not loving people.
Mm-hmm. It's not easy, man.
Because that's really what it boils down to, right? The ones that criticize those that aren't open is pretty much like, you don't love and trust God enough. The ones that are open, you don't love people enough. So one way or the other, you're being challenged that you don't follow one of the two greatest commandments. So anyway, guys, just I guess what we'd say take from that is, you know, always be willing to ask questions and to seek reconciliation and to give people an opportunity to respond. Just be careful that you're not giving the answer before you ask. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But you're not asking a question, but only accepting one answer.
Yep. That's good, man.
Anyway, how's your week been?
Let's see. So, I think I've had a pretty solid week. I've been reading through John.
One of my favorites.
Mm-hmm. And it's been like one of those things where
You talking about the Gospel of John?
Yeah, the Gospel of John. And it's really good. You know, every time I read Jesus, it's just it's different.
It's good, man.
And so the way I've been reading it is I haven't necessarily just been going like chapter, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've been going and looking at moments.
That's cool.
And like that because I even brought some up earlier, and was asking questions about it, because, one thing that's been on my mind lately is just how people reacted to some of the things Jesus said back then. And it makes me I try to put myself in that spot, and I go, man, like, what would I have done? How would I have reacted? I know earlier before we came on, I was asking about Peter, when Jesus initially, warns him that you're going to deny me 3 times. And right before Jesus told him that, he said, I will never leave you, and he says that. It makes me go like, what would I have done in that moment? Would I have just like stared at him like, or like would I have been like, no, or like what would I have done? So
you probably would have been offended. That would be hurtful, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. It's interesting, and also just hearing the way Jesus just speaks is so powerful, because people paint Jesus in today's society like buddy Jesus, but that guy was bold. And he would say some things that, like you said, it would cause crowds to want to kill him, but it was truth, and I don't know, man. It makes me, when I read what he speaks to people, it makes me want to be more bold. It makes me want to, because when I think about Jesus, he lived a perfect sinless life. And look at some of the stuff he said that was not considered sin, man. That was, that was passion. That was truth. And so it goes, man, I'm so, what's the word I'm looking for? Man, what is it? Not, for some reason, the word brittle's coming to mind, but it's not the word I'm wanting to use, but it's what I'll use since I can't think of anything else. So yeah, I'm very brittle when it comes to speaking truth and like not,
kind of anxious about it or shy or like hesitant.
Hesitant's a better word, probably. Skittish, maybe.
Skittish. There, that's
skittish. Yeah, just a little skittish about like being bold, and there's times where I can see opportunities and I don't take them because I get that I get skittish and I don't want to ruffle feathers too much or whatever or I get scared that I'm gonna say something and I'm gonna go way out of left field and I'm going to either say something wrong or I'm gonna come in way too harsh and hurt somebody and not. They won't feel the love that I'm trying to express.
Sure.
So I get worried about that sometimes, and I think that can run me sometimes. And if I get caught in that, I find myself constantly running away from that stuff, which is not healthy. Which is, it's good that I see it because then I know, like, okay, I can recognize it and I can try to move past it in those moments. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And I don't know. It was cool because in the midst of that, I also realized how much weight leadership comes, like how much leadership comes with how much weight it is. Can't speak, but so that was cool because having that realization of man, like how real it is. It made me scared, but it also made me go, man, like I've done so much since I've claimed to be a Christian, and I met Jesus. I've done so much, and I guess I forget. Where I've come from sometimes, and I beat myself up a lot because I feel like I'm more, in the back of the pack than, in the middle or the front. I always feel like I'm the one that's dead last dragging, and everyone's trying to pull me with them. So I guess I'm just trying to remember where I've come from and the transformation that has occurred. And how cool it is, and what a testimony that is, and I don't want to take my life and make it less impactful because of the way I view myself. God has used me before to help, for people to see Jesus, and He'll continue to do that. But I don't want to dampen that impact because of my view of myself. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to keep that in mind throughout the weeks, and this last week I think I did a pretty okay. Was it this? No, it was last week when I saw the lady in Walmart. I think I already talked about that, but that was a cool moment too, and it kind of sparked me to feel a little more bold and like, just trying to do a couple more things, and I don't know. I want to look for opportunities to love people. That's one of our things that we're supposed to. That's such a big thing that we don't do so often that we should do. The Bible tells us to do that. Look for opportunities to love people. Show them Jesus. Showing people Jesus isn't just saying, do you know Jesus? It's just it's the small things too. Loving people who don't know Jesus. You can't just go, do you know Jesus? Because they're going to be mad and confused, So, yeah, I guess for my mind, it's been good because I'm pondering all this stuff, which is always good. When you're not thinking about it, that's when it gets dangerous. Because then what are you thinking about? So
that's a good point. I had a similar kind of, I was speaking with someone the other day, and they said somewhat similar to you. Was just this, I'm messed up. I can't get right. I can't do this. I try, but I can't ever be good, whatever. And I need to ponder this and write because I've mentioned it many times on the show, and you and I've had this kind of talk a little bit, but it's hard. I don't think I've fully filled out the thought. But, man, we are hindered so much by our self-doubt and our self-hatred.
It's true, man.
And, I don't know if it's because we have a culture that glorifies sin within the church. Like, we glorify pointing out our faults.
Yeah.
Right? Because the best Christians are the ones who self-hate the most.
Yeah.
I'm never allowed to be okay with where I'm at because that's arrogant or that's.
It's so true, man.
And it's an odd thing.
It is odd because it still strikes me because you're right, man. Like I think that's where my mind goes.
Mm-hmm.
My mind immediately goes to you don't deserve it, you suck. Rather than, you know, I'm saved.
Mm.
I have the Holy Spirit. You know, Jesus gave me this power. I can do this. You know, instead it's more like you don't deserve to be here. You know, why didn't you do this? You know, it's because you don't believe. Or just all this junk, man. The enemy, dude. It's dangerous.
Yeah, I think John Eldridge said this quote a long time ago in Wild at Heart, I believe, and I really like it. And it's not direct from the Bible, but I think there's some truth to it. And it is, the story of your life is the story of the long and brutal assault on your heart by the one who knows what you can be and fears it. And, you know, God's people that walk in purpose and in confidence in their identity, that is a dangerous person, right, to the enemy and to a world that's filled with hate and evil. So I think I think you're right, man. And as far as it's just so hard sometimes to see outside of that, especially when I think sometimes our Christian culture, we can, again, glorify. You're most godly when you hate yourself, which is not biblical.
No, it's complete opposite.
So anyway,
but yeah, so I guess, you know, if I know you guys, sometimes you'll ask on live, like, what can we pray for you guys? You know, I guess one thing you can pray for me is to just keep that mindset of, you know, once, you know, when I grab it, I, you know, pray that I can keep it as long as possible, you know, because unfortunately, you know, with us being humans, it tends to, you know, it comes and goes, but, you know, keep that mindset of, you know, I have the whole, you know, the good side, not the bad side of, you know, doubting yourself, but instead be walking confidently, like you said. So, anyways, how's your week been, Todd?
It's been okay, I would say. I think trying to, yeah, it's been okay. I guess that's the best way. That's all I really can say about it. Excuse me, so sorry. Yeah, it's been, I'm trying to think of anything particular. I think sometimes the only interesting thing I've kind of pondered is sometimes the idea that, you know, if you, that we can just feel separated from the idea where Jesus said, you think I've come to bring peace, I've come to bring the sword, and I'll turn family against family. And I know sometimes I feel that way. I feel separated from my family. I feel kind of like a black sheep in some ways because my beliefs, they, you know, the majority of my family, vast majority of my family are not believers.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not like they're mean to me or anything, but I just always feel separated. And
I get that.
Some of that is from them and some of it's probably from me because I don't want to take, you know, I don't know. It just feels like there's this separation sometimes.
I felt that more and more with my family the longer I've been a Christian. So
that's kind of the sad thing. The positive thing, not sad, just something to think about and accept. And it doesn't really make me sad because I think that's where, you know, having your brothers and sisters in Christ is such a blessing because you have that family still, lack of a better word. I also feel like it's funny sometimes how people are. They feel like it's one or the other. You know, one of the things that I struggle with is whenever I say things like that, what I just said, and maybe because of my own life, there's this idea sometimes that I think it's good to cut your family out, or I think you should cut your family out, and you should. I don't think that, you know. And it's funny how we're such extremists as human beings. We want to have a black and white. There is things that are black and white, but we want this like extreme view of everything.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, it's like family over everything all the time. Yep. And the other one is you should cut your family out in your church. Like both of those extremes are not good. And ideally it's the same, right? They shouldn't always collide. But just that idea of like making sure that I want to make sure I love family. I love marriage. I love kids. I think they're a huge blessing. I think Scripture talks about that. We have a lot of new moms in the church, and I've been pondering a lot lately about making sure they know that that their new job as a mother is literally a blessing from God.
Yeah.
And that they will have possibly the single most important voice in the life of their child, and what an awesome honor and opportunity that is. And just thinking of ways to encourage family and to encourage kids and to all those kinds of things. All right, motherhood and parenthood. And
So
does that
true,
make
man.
sense?
No,
These
it
are
does
just
make
random
sense.
things I've been pondering.
And I think I can help encourage you, man, in that, especially the whole family thing, because I know you've had to deal with, you know, a lot of people thinking that you think that way. A lot of people, for some reason, do think that you don't like families or something, and like you don't.
It's so weird.
I know, and you know, I think this is why I love you, and I think this is why people don't get it, but I do, and it's not the fact that you don't love families and you don't love kids, you don't love parenthood and all this stuff. It's when people use that stuff as excuses, you know, to not be there, or you know, to do other things. You know, it's
not follow the fate.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like when they use you know, a marriage as an excuse to not have community and that kind of stuff.
Or to not follow. Yeah.
You know, and I think you've expressed that so many times, but I still don't. I feel like people don't get it. It's because you are a very perceptive person, and you can, and you know, God's given you a gift of discernment, and you can tell when people are using it as an excuse instead of, you know, they want to. That's the thing. It's weird because I think, you know, you have this good sense of when people can, you know, and people do this. We're human. You know, people will use that as an excuse to not do stuff, but they're also still not putting everything in where they're going either. It's weird. It's a weird dynamic, I think.
Yeah, I think because I ask questions, people get upset sometimes, or not just me in general. So I just think, I don't know, I've been struck lately. I'm just so thankful. It's funny. Thank you by the way, for the encouragement. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And for seeing my heart in that. But it's not even, the other positive side of it is, sorry guys, this is all over the place. It's real talk. We don't edit this. And
Real talk.
But I think it's been neat to see, you know, our church has been around, it's been 7 years now since the official beginning, but we've only been in our own building for 2, and which is wild.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see us kind of transition to the next stage, right? Where we had, you know, new families, people getting married. We had so many marriages, so exciting to be a part of, and to watch new families grow, and to see families, you know, to see children being born here, and you know, it's just exciting times. And sometimes I don't think I let myself sit back and appreciate what an awesome thing to be a part of. You know,
it is kind of surreal. I don't think about it myself. A lot of these people that have kids and are parents, I knew them before, which is weird.
Well, they've married some of them.
Yeah. So crazy.
Pretty neat, man. So, yeah, overall, I think I'm doing okay. Weird times. It's also making sure, if you guys want to know personally my own faith journey, making sure that in the midst of the world, because I've been called a quote justice, right? I went to counseling, so you're a justice, Todd. It's like I always want to see justice done, and there's dangers to that if I think I'm the only one that knows what it is. But sometimes I can get caught up in the big things that I want to fix, and I always want to make sure that I'm keeping my eyes on Jesus. That first and foremost, my identity as a believer in Christ, as Christ, right, in Him and He in me, is over every other identity, and making sure I don't let the world or my own issues cloud that, right? Because I said it in a post last week, and I'll say it right now. You know, it doesn't matter an election, doesn't matter anything that's going on. My King is still King, and no one's ever going to remove Him from that. And this is where our belief really shows itself. In the midst of chaos, do you believe God still reigns? And we have this idea. So one of the dangers sometimes in America is we have this concept that, you know, there's no promise that America, I don't mean to scare anyone, is going to be America until Jesus comes back. We don't know that. We don't know that. And it's very egocentric to think that the kingdom, I don't know, is only America, right? And so it's interesting as we go through all this to think about what we really believe about the kingdom of God and what Jesus said, and when He talks about trials and tribulations and wars and you know, all those kinds of things, false teachings and people not wanting to hear truth of Christ. Yeah. You start to see it in a different light, and make sure you stay focused on real kingdom work. Does that make sense? I don't know, man. I'm probably all over the place, but it is what it is. So you want to dive into some questions?
Hey, let's get it.
Do a couple. How long have we been on here today, old Clintonius pilot?
Clintonius pilot.
All right, so we probably won't do all these.
Yeah.
Hey, number 1, why is it so hard to teach people the joy and blessing of giving to the church? Didn't we talk about this actually? Skip it. I think we answered this on
I
live.
think that's the only one we answered. You're right. I think
So I'll go to number 2.
Yeah.
What does your church do to help new Christians grow in their faith? We got one similar to this, but it's not the exact question.
So-
what does your church do to help new Christians grow in their faith?
So this is a process that I think we've been trying to go, figure out for a while. I think one of the cool things that we did was we had a new believers class, which was super cool. We have our annual baptism service, and anybody that got baptized, and honestly, just anybody else who wanted to come, they could. And it was I think like 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks. Super cool because it went in
Our
depth.
foundations class. Yeah.
Foundations class. That's what it was called. And shout out to Tim for leading that. That was awesome, man. And Todd, well done. You're in there giving your input too. It was awesome. I loved it. I went to it and I learned a lot of stuff. It was really cool, and people got to have just cool discussions about what they believed, and and it was just all like you said, foundations. It was about it just got to the core of what Christianity is and what you say you're believing.
Yeah.
So that was really cool, and I think that helped people. That helped
Sure.
People understand more about what they were what they were believing. What they were, I guess,
Claiming to believe.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you. And man, I think, this is something that we've been convicted about, but I think it's something that we're special at. And I think we just want to get back to being even more special is outreach. We have a lot of very passionate, people in our congregation who love to invite people, whether that's to, basketball, or whether that's to a service or, to life groups. I think our congregation is so special in that, and, we're a community-focused, church. And when we do that, that gives us opportunities to invite people in and, see what this is all about. So I think that's how we do, I think we do a good job at doing that. So, and again, like I said, I think, we've went through a season of, struggling in some areas of, feeling a little stagnant in that. But, I think overall, we've done great.
Yeah. I would say we definitely agree with you. We have areas to grow in general. The last year's been tough on a lot of, our mindset sometimes. I like what you said. You actually brought up a few things that I probably wouldn't have thought of. The first thing we do, if a new believer is, we give them a Bible because that's what they need most. But what I like about that is we do have a foundations class. 6 weeks of really going through the basics of what you are claiming to believe as a Christian, all the way from what is salvation and what is it, what's process, what is the Bible, why do we read it, who is Jesus, beyond what all these things, what did he accomplish, and what is the church, and all kinds of cool stuff. So that's been great. We also, I like what you said, and I didn't think of it this way, but what I think that we do maybe best in some ways, although again, is the idea, faith, evangelism, or helping new believers grow. The primary thing to do is to get them discipled and mentored. And the way to do that is to invite them into community where they're surrounded by that kind of people on the same mission. So a lot of what we do is sort of organic in the sense that there's just opportunities to invite them to be around other believers. So
absolutely,
we have life groups, which not everyone takes advantage of, but it's an opportunity to really dig in and grow with a specific group of people for a set amount of time, right? And really dig into some of that. We have basketball, which sounds silly, but you're inviting people into community in that way. We just have a lot of opportunities for it to organically happen. And then one of the things I am proud of for our church is the culture we've set, where it's a lifestyle and trying to invite people in discipleship organically, right? So I think that's good. Real talk. Sounds crazy, but
true.
This partially grew out of the opportunity to give people the chance to ask those questions in their faith. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there's certainly other areas we can grow in and keep growing in. But that's the gist of it.
Awesome. All right. So it says, next question. In Matthew 6, Jesus talks about different Christian practices, and says to make sure that we are doing things in secret, and surely we will then be rewarded. I assume he says this as a heart issue of potential pride. I think of leading by example for your kids and others you are around that isn't in private. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
Could this be in the same category? That was a little jumbly. I'm sorry.
He didn't. Is it the question is, or your reading of it?
My reading of it. Sorry, my reading.
This guy.
Of it,
The only thing I can think of from chapter 6 is He's talking about fasting. Whenever you're fast, don't be sad-faced like the hypocrites, for they make their faces unattractive, so their fasting is obvious to people. I assure you they've got their reward. But when you fast, put oil on your face and wash your face so that you don't show your fasting to people. It's your Father in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And then up on the beginning of it, does say at the beginning of 6, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of people to be seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whatever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be applauded by people. I assure you they've got their reward. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be given in secret, and your Father who sees in secret rewards you. Essentially what that's saying is it's not like you can't ever it's a sin to be like, yeah, I give some money. Mm-hmm. It's a heart issue. You know, Jesus is almost always talking about our heart. And it's like, check yourself that you're not doing these practices to be seen as religious, but you're so that you can get a reward and be looked at as righteous, but you're doing it. But true love and giving is not done for the earthly rewards you get, but are done because of our Father, to tell our Father, and to do good things. Does that make sense? So it's a heart issue. You seem confused.
So
I don't read their question. I know what they're asking.
Okay.
Because the Father thing, like that, the best we can answer the question is to tell you what the meaning of the verse is.
Gotcha.
So the question that's attached to it, you can hand that to me if you want.
Yeah, here you go.
Because I didn't know. I think of leading by example for your kids and others you're around. That isn't in private. Could this be in the same category? I don't really fully understand that part of the question. Mm-hmm. But yes, I would say, I assume he says this as a hard issue of potential pride. Yes. And the idea of, you're not doing it just to be seen. You're doing it to honor God and to love people.
Okay.
Don't become, because he always made the comparison to the Pharisees who did things to be given honor. It was never about honoring God. It was about honoring self-glorification.
Gotcha.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that makes sense now. I was just a little...
No, that's all right. I'm sorry. I wanted to see these.
Sure.
I think I have another one.
Yeah, we got some more. Yeah,
maybe two more.
Okay.
So we don't keep it too long.
All right.
Don't want to talk to us. Just
Nobody wants to hear us for too
long. This one says, there's a lot. Guys, if you've asked the question, hasn't been answered yet, stick with us. We will continue to answer them.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we've got a huge influx now.
What do you feel? Oh, no, it's you. You're going to ask that. Sorry, forgot. Rich man's last words to his sons. Don't wait to tell them about Jesus. Your thoughts?
I think that it's surreal. The talks about the rich man, how he was a good follower of Jesus, and Jesus even said, hey, like, you've done well. Just need you to, sell all your belongings. And he walked away sad because he didn't want to give it up. And, it's crazy how what he experienced afterwards, he realized the reality of what he was in. And, I like the idea of him saying that. What good advice to somebody who's still around to do it. Don't wait, because you never know when you're going to have another opportunity. So, I love that.
I think we had that question a few weeks ago about the guy who said his life, so much wasted time. Mm-hmm. For me, I always just think about the idea that life is short, and everything we do, regardless of what we do, let's make it count, because it's so easy. We've talked about this so many times to get caught up in the grind.
Yep.
So I agree with you on that. I think it's just what's really important in life, and let's make those things the most important.
Absolutely. That's so good. I love that, because I think we so often just get caught up in the motions, and we forget what we're even about sometimes. We're just kind of like, oh, days go by, and we just kind of float around, and we forget, like, we claim to believe this, but we don't act like it in the slightest. So, so this will be the last one?
Sure.
Okay. What do you feel is a good length of time to court/date and then get married?
This is a great question, and it's one of those things where I would say, do as I say, not as I've done. Mm-hmm. The older I've got, the more I have realized that the modern perception of dating is dangerous to a degree, or kind of silly. I don't necessarily know if there's a feeling. What I've told what I've talked to you guys about is what I would say from my experience, and biblically, they did it completely different than we do nowadays. But in our times, I would say this. I'm not sure there's a set time.
Me either.
I would say this. If you know you know, what are you waiting for at times? Like, if you're in a situation where you're, let's say, out of college, because sometimes that, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. I would tell you this: the longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes to do it right.
Absolutely.
That being said, you know, you want to give enough time to see them in different situations, to see them around family and friends, to see where their faith is, all those kinds of things. So, you know, if you've been dating, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question beyond. That's a weird question because it's like how you feel. It's tough for me to answer that other than to say situations are different. I would say the longer you go, you would need to ask yourself why you're waiting so long, and are you making it harder for yourself to do the right thing and to approach the relationship in a holy and healthy way.
That's
holy
good,
mean
man.
HOLY.
Yes. I think I 100% agree with you. I think that if you are dating somebody, if you are not actively seeking answers to if you're going to marry them or not, then you should.
If the goal isn't marriage, you shouldn't be with
exactly.
them.
You know,
if you're not thinking to yourself, you know, we're going to get married, I'm looking to marry this person, and as soon as you know whether you are or not, you should not be in a relationship. If you don't think you're going to marry that person, you can't see yourself marrying that person in. We're not talking about in high school and stuff. After that, within a year to, you know, based on situation, why are you dating them?
Absolutely.
And again, I understand that. People are going to say, Todd, look at you. Again, I've learned a lot in my life. So in a way, I can tell you this from better experience.
Yes. Yeah, man. I agree.
All right. Well, that's all I got, man.
Awesome. Hey,
Weird
see you guys.
show.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
You got anything to say?
Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I know we were a little jumbly today, so hopefully you guys get something from it. I love you guys. You know, you guys are the reason why we do this. Make sure you like, share this video, comment on it. And the more people see it, the more they get to hear about Jesus. So that's what we're all about. Love you guys and appreciate you.
Yep, don't have much to add. You know where the link is up above, or below or somewhere, www.theremnant.life/real-talk. Click the link, go down. You can submit a topic or question. We have a lot more to go through. We'll do it either this week in live or next week.
Yep.
Speaking of live, you can join us live on Facebook or YouTube this Thursday at 8:30 p.m.
8:30
Eastern Standard Time. And we will be taking questions and comments live, have some fun, do giveaways. It's a good time.
Heck yeah.
If you're interested in a little more, you know, what we believe as the church that sponsors us, you can go to www.theremnant.life. We also have our messages and our sermons online and on podcast and any podcast player through the Remnant Church. Fancy R. If you haven't liked or followed, please do. And if you're listening to this video or podcast and it's blessed you in any way, would you please help us out by sharing or liking and all those kinds of things, the link to the way you've listened to it or watched it. And you can also donate anytime, completely tax deductible at www.theremnant.life/give. Hit the drop-down box to Real Talk, and you can be assured that your donation goes right back into the show.
Boom.
Hey, we hope you guys have a great day. We love you so much. Keep praying for us. Keep praying for our country. And remember, God is still God. Our King is still King. And you know what? He wins. Have a great day, and God bless you.